Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. One that is long overdue for this channel, especially considering that I've got a personal history with this knife. This is the Benchmade Barrage, but it's the M390 variant with the aluminum bolsters, the G10 scales, and of course the M390 blade, as I just said there. So as far as I can tell, as of the date of this video, it seems to be that this version specifically is discontinued. I don't honestly know that 100% for a fact, but it kind of makes sense considering they have the standard Barrage and then the S30V version with the G10 scales, and this thing is on the custom shop where you can add 20 CV, right? Sadly, there's no option for the aluminum bolsters, which I think really gives this knife an interesting look. Yeah, that seems to be the case. I have my normal links down in the description, but this knife was actually sent to me by Scott Whittington of USA Made Blade, so I would urge you guys to actually go check out USA Made Blade, even though this knife doesn't appear to be there anymore, because Scott does some awesome stuff. And as you can see here, we've got some custom engraving here of the Sasquatch on the pocket clip and on the bolsters, and that's really cool. He does a lot of stuff like that. You can get some really cool like custom ano work. He has like his Anomascus thing, and then he'll do laser work and things, and you find a lot of stuff like that on his ZT and his Hinderer knives and a whole bunch of other brands that he carries. So I have nothing set up with them. I don't make anything by telling you guys about USA Made Blade. I just like them. I've been shopping with them for a long time, and it's an excellent place to pick up knives. So check them out. Thank you so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some cool stickers and other benefits, there's of course a link down in the description for that. The support would mean the world to me. And please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. All right, let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. Overall length of the Benchmade Barrage in M390, by the way, the full model number is listed in the title. 8.5 inches overall. Blade length is actually about 3.6 inches. Cutting edge is exactly 3.5 inches overall. So excellent. Definitely a big knife, but I think the overall ratios are great. How about up against the, let's do some size comparisons, what I usually say. How about up against the Ontario Rat Model 1? Rat 1 coming in just a hair longer at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. I think this is an excellent size comparison for those of you wondering. How about the Spyderco Para 3? Is the Para, where is it? There it is. It was in my pocket today. Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7.25 inches overall. And last but not least, the Benchmade Mini Griptilian. Mini Griptilian coming in at 6.75 inches overall. How is the action on this guy? This is actually an assisted Benchmade, which means you flip that thumb stud there and the spring carries the blade out. Now, before people get all upset, oh, assisted, boo, right, I'm leaving, unsubscribe. This knife can be de-assisted, and it doesn't take too long just digging around on Google and on the forums to find that many people will tell you that this is one of the very best de-assisted Benchmade knives in existence, and it's not that complicated to do. This is a stupidly underrated knife. Just, you know, I'm going to tell you guys, but it's going to be a normal Metal Complex review, but oh my gosh. This knife has been, this design has been around for a long time, you know, and people liked it, right? But even today, considering you can de-assist it, right? You've always been able to de-assist it, but considering what people look for in a modern folding knife here in 2020, yeah, this is ridiculously underrated. It was on one of my top 10 most underrated knives playlists. But listen, if you like the assisted thing, then great. It's easy to manipulate. You just flip the thing and it goes. It's not classified as a switchblade, right? It's got a normal, you know, just a standard operational axis lock, right? It is plenty powerful. It does deploy and lock up solid, absolutely. And then you just pull the axis bar down and you can close it, right? The action's great. It has a little lock, right? So you can lock in the closed position, which actually can be frustrating sometimes if you accidentally do that. You can also lock in the open position, which makes it to where the axis bar cannot disengage, right? I don't know that it really needs that. Benchmade likes to include that on a lot of their assisted knives, but it's there and it's not really in the way. The only problem with it is, like I stated, is sometimes you might accidentally push it up, and then you're like trying to get it out, and you're messing with it. You have to push it back down. But yeah, the action's great, and I've heard that the action's incredible when you de-assist the knife, which is probably why so many people are like, oh my gosh, underrated, right? So yeah, don't get too hung up on the assisted thing. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools. You can pick up my tools down in the description. There are both expensive and inexpensive options for you guys to take a look at. The pivot is actually underneath the front scale here, and I believe, like most Benchmade knives, it's a T10. Unfortunately, the body screws are going to be T6, and there are a lot of them. There are multiple for the scale. There's 2 on each side for the scales, and then 2 on each side for the bolsters, and then all of the pocket clip screws are T6. So there's a lot of hardware on this guy, because then there's more stuff underneath. And some of them T6. The T6 thing, it's always a bummer because they strip a little bit easier than your T8 or larger heads, right? And then the other thing that's kind of a bummer is there's a lot of hardware on this guy. And then on top of that, axis lock knives are not super fun to take apart, as I recently demonstrated putting the titanium scales on this guy. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're going to take this knife apart, you're in for it. Make sure you've got something to keep all of the hardware, or to keep track of all the hardware, right? And then just be prepared to deal with the axis lock. That definitely is a bummer, but that's the case with all Benchmade knives. In terms of the amount of hardware and the size of hardware, it's not a deal breaker. None of what I'm saying is a deal breaker. Just if you plan to take it apart, be prepared. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here, these scales are contoured. They're a little bit thicker, right? For some people, this is going to be too much thickness. If I'm gonna, mess with a knife that's got excess thickness over the Para 3, I want it to be contoured, because then it fills the hand, and this knife does a great job of that. So there's your thickness there. Let's do height and length up against 2 knives that have a little bit of awkward carry profiles, and nobody ever seems to complain about, the PM2 and Para 3. Lengthwise, you're looking at a longer body than the Para 3 and just about the same length as the PM2, but it's not nearly as tall, because the PM2 and Para 3 have this sort of ramp right there. So really, if for people who have an issue with this in the pocket, it's probably just going to be because of the thickness and the weight. The blade stock is really not all that thick. In fact, I think it's going to come in at about 120 thousandths, 125 thousandths. Yeah, right about 120 thousandths. That's pretty typical for Benchmade. We are looking at a combination of aluminum, G10, and steel for the internals here. Get my flashlight out. You can pick the flashlight up in the description as well. There is some internal milling, which I think is good. I think that's needed. Blade's not adding an enormous amount of weight, but everything all together certainly does make for a fairly heavy knife. I'm going to guess this is 4.5 to 5 1/4 ounces. Okay, higher than that. A little over 5 1/4 ounces, right? As far as the typical ratios go, there's a lot of people that, oh, it's over 1 ounce and a hinge. Oh, it's over 4 ounces, right? If you're used to carrying larger knives, and I always say my preferred weight range is between 4 and 6.5 ounces because I like heft and solidity a little bit, and I like a full-size knife. So for me, it's going to be fine. For people who regularly carry the Para 3 lightweight or bug out or other knives that are similar, or you wear tight pants or light material, probably not going to be for you. Anybody who's used to carrying a full-size knife, this isn't going to be a problem. What did we not go over? Did I miss anything? I don't think that I did. All right, let's go ahead and check out the anatomy here. Beautiful aluminum bolsters right here that have these vertical lines, and then you've got some horizontal lines here, right? Sometimes busyness really turns me off to a knife, but this is kind of the right, I don't know, it's got the right profile. These little areas in here that I guess, kind of meet up with your fingers, right? If you're holding it in the, reverse grip. I mean, it's a place for your fingers to go that makes it comfortable. Doesn't provide any meaningful traction. Most of the traction is going to come from these lines right here, and they do a decent job of that. Honestly, the ergonomics on this guy are great. Even with the pocket clip that kind of pokes up just a little bit, truthfully, yeah, I could use this knife all day, no problem. I really like the ergonomic lines on this guy, and when I said I had a personal history with this knife was my initial introduction to M390. I didn't actually purchase it right away. It's just that's how I found out about M390 steel, was through this version of the knife. And I thought, S30V must be the best steel ever. This was a long, long time ago, right? S30V must be the best. No, it turns out there's this crazy monster called M390 that's got superior corrosion resistance and superior edge retention if heat treated correctly. Obviously, what it lacks versus S30V is toughness, but the knife community for however many years has seemed to just automatically favor potential edge retention over everything else. So the end result was, of course, that M390 was hailed as superior. Anyways, I fell into that, was really interested in picking this up, and it was right after I had purchased the standard Benchmade Barrage, which back then was in Grivery or plastic and 154cm, and I loved that thing, right? So this was like this crazy exotic monster version of the knife, and I was always just like super interested in it. My first knife in M390 that I purchased was actually the original ZT0562CF, which back then actually did come in M390. Then I think it was 204P and then 20CV, right? Which are those are analogs to M390. But I eventually went back and actually purchased this knife for myself years ago. And I don't know why I sold it. I shouldn't have, because I feel like I think this is discontinued now. But anyways, this is M390, and I think this is just an excellent blade all the way around. Like I said, not thick. You have a flat that carries out about 50% the length of the blade. Beautiful swedge up top, nice. Just very, very straightforward spear point blade that's got a little bit of Benchmade's light tumbling on it mixed with it's sort of like a tumbled satin finish. Looks really nice. Edge geometry down behind the edge is pretty darn thin. This is a good blade for M390, right? I mean, it's not something you're going to want to use to baton stuff, but you got a lot of blade, a lot of cutting edge, nothing in the cutting path, right? And it's M390, which Benchmade generally does a good job with. The blade looks good. You have the Benchmade butterfly logo on one side, and then on the other side we have the Osborne design logo and the patent number and all that other crap that doesn't need to be on there. And then it says M390. Very handsome blade. The edge is done very, very well. No wonkiness or anything like that. It's just really good. I just really like the blade. I like simplicity. I like just a simple blade. Your puncture tasks are going to be great. Your slicing tasks, your push cuts, whatever it is that you're doing, the blade is great, and it's you know, its relationship with the handle and the ergonomic lines are just awesome. You can put a lot of power into the cuts, and I really like that. I love that the edges are all knocked down heavily. I love the contouring of the scales, how this meets up here. The seam between the aluminum bolster and the G10 looks great. The G10 looks awesome. Really glad that this wasn't the plastic stuff. The liner is lipped. It would have been cool to see it countersunk. It would have, I guess, it would have helped out a little bit with weight reduction, but that would have been a lot more expensive, and this is already not a cheap knife, right? This is a fully ambidextrous knife because of the axis lock and the ambidextrous nature of the axis lock, which means you can mount the clip on the left or right hand side. So lefties rejoice. It is set up for tip up only, which in my opinion is the only way to carry a knife, but your opinion may vary from mine. It's got a little teeny tiny lanyard hole that's just there. It's not being prioritized over the clip, so no big deal. It's got a backspacer back here, which I honestly feel like is probably plastic. It doesn't look like G10. It's not fibrous or anything like that. Whatever, that's fine. They could have done standoffs. The backspacer's cool. A little teeny tiny bit of texturing, but it's pretty flush, so okay. Pocket clip. We have the we have this shape of pocket clip, which is an unfortunate shape. I don't like that clip because of how it looks. Functionally, it's perfectly fine, but this clip will work better. And I don't have the Griptilian out there, but I do have the Ritter Hogue, which has a very similar pocket clip to Benchmade standard deep carry clip. This clip will also work just fine. Any clip I think is better than this one aesthetically, but functionally it's fine. The knife carries about right here, not shallow, not deep. That's perfectly acceptable. The way that it is swooped up means it's not going to fight your pockets, right? And then it's got this nice groove down here. Honestly, if the bottom here was just shaped differently, it would be better, but that's my only complaint, is that seems to... Benchmade has kind of an issue with that. But yeah, it's fine. And Scott's done a good job of taking the focus away from the shape by putting the Sasquatch logo on there, and I think that looks cool, right? This side of the knife is much the same as the front. In fact, it's identical, other than the fact that the pocket clip is currently mounted over there. Because of the way that the primary area for your index finger is shaped, you can easily access it with your middle finger back here to do the reverse kick out. Right? It's very easy to deploy this way, and even de-assisted, it's going to be much of the same because of the way that the axis bar works as a sort of pseudo detent thing. This knife is, yeah, it's centered, and like I said, lockup absolutely and completely solid. That's great. Man, little things that I can nitpick. It's a bit chunky, bit heavy. It's got a lot of T6 screws on it. It is a absolute pain in the butt to take apart because it's an axis lock, right? And it's expensive. 220 bucks. Honestly, considering everything else that Benchmade has in their line, you're getting an American-made knife with an excellent warranty. That's a huge reason to pay a little bit extra for a Benchmade. Benchmade has a ridiculously good warranty. M390, right? Yeah, that 220 price isn't bad. I've never really disagreed with that price, you know? 200 bucks, that'd be great. Everything could be 20 bucks less and be a little bit better, right? I don't really have a problem with that. The biggest issue here is that this particular version of the knife is discontinued. Fortunately, you can create something very similar on the Benchmade custom shop. Or you can just buy the standard S30V version of the knife, which is also, you know, by default, after this review, considering what it costs, also an incredibly recommendable knife. At some point, I'll have to take a look at that as well. Yeah, probably the most underrated knife in Benchmade's line. This is awesome, and I much prefer it to... Seriously, I mean, like, the Benchmades that I would readily pick up right now, the Griptilian, I'm never going to not like the Griptilian, the Super Freak, and this guy. There's a bunch of other Benchmades I think are interesting, but like if someone said, you got to pick up a few Benchmades right now, here's some money, just pick. Yeah, for sure. I'm so bummed that this exact version is going away, or it seems like it's going away, because that aluminum bolster is really cool. I like how that looks, and the design overall, the Barrage design is great. I personally would de-assist this, but yeah, you're talking about an excellent user that just, man, this thing feels good in the hand. It's a big knife that manages to not really seem all that big other than the thickness of the scales. By the way, it runs on phosphor bronze, which is great. Absolutely the best pivot setup for hard and dirty use. So that's awesome. Even though this is discontinued, or it seems to be, I'm going to be putting this in my most recommended knives playlist. And because of my personal history with this and just the fact that I really like the aesthetics and how the blade looks, yeah, it's one of my favorite knives of all time. This is going to go in my most recommended knives playlist and my favorite knives of all time playlist. If you can find somewhere to pick this up brand new, I would urge that you do that, because the secondary market will do what it does and jack the price up on this thing if it actually is discontinued. If you can't do that, build one in the custom shop, right? But most importantly, check out USA Made Blade. Absolutely. Scott's an awesome guy, and I love the website, and I have made tons of purchases there since well before the channel started. So yeah, definitely check him out. All right, guys, I think that's going to be pretty much it. Make sure to follow me on Instagram. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.